I was actually raised on a farm, and until I was 13 years old, I milked cows with my family, and we had a little dairy. But then I left the farm, and my first job was a commercial welder, and then I became a certified paramedic for 17 years, and I was a medical educator for the health department and also for the EMS division. And my wife's an RN. We've been in medicine most all of our lives. But in 1996, I retired fully from any of the medical stuff and took over the family farms. My grandparents had passed away, and we had this opportunity. So I branded the farming operation and diversified and integrated, and it got local. And I dedicated myself to connecting directly to consumers. And when we did that, we realized we had to do milk raw, because we didn't want anybody between us and the consumers, like a processing plant or a brand or something like that. And that was a very successful move. Altadena had just gone out of business in 1999. In 2000, Organic Pastures Dairy was founded. And from day one, we've had tremendous growth. But it's been based on educational outreach, because people don't understand what raw milk is. And when they find out, they become fanatical, because it has all the missing enzymes, the good bacteria, the minerals, the good fats from grass-fed animals, and it's organic. So it's its pure form. It's a mirror image of breast milk. And when kids have mom's breast milk for 6-8 months, and mom either dries up, wants to go back to work, or doesn't have enough, raw milk is where they should go, not some highly processed food. And as a result, raw milk's become very, very popular in California. I realized that the commodity markets always had a middleman that took away all the profit. And I didn't want to have that going on. And I saw my neighbors just suffering with these roller coaster rides of high and low, high and low. And I just didn't want to do that. I left a really successful EMS career and a medical educator, and I didn't want to go get on something that wasn't going to be good. And I also realized early on, not initially, but really quickly, that there was a medical aspect to nutrition. And to apply that was going to be a very important part of the value-added proposition. So, you know, it became pretty quick in my mind. I was able to put one and one together really quick and figure out that, hey, listen, this raw milk thing is just like breast milk, and it's missing. And when moms figure it out, they're happy. And you don't have the ear infections, the asthma, allergies, eczema. You don't have the irritable bowel problems, because the immune system starts repairing itself from this desolate diet we have, the standard American diet, which is so immune depressing. It doesn't have any good bacteria. The antibiotics we use to heal ourselves afterwards kills off bacteria. So we're left with this really bad depression of immune system depression. And raw milk has that biodiversity of bacteria that's missing in our lives, and can reseed it back in the gut. It has the specialized sugars that feed that bacteria. So, you know, things stacked up real quick in the first year of operation, where I realized that raw milk was the way to go. And the state of California had a legal way to do raw milk. So we built a little creamery, and we started producing raw milk, and I put a really good sound safety program in place, and my son and daughter work with me. And it's just been a really good building system, you know, building the business since 2000. In 2011, Jamie Oliver, Food Revolution guy, he's all over raw milk. He loves it. I caught up with him down at the Hollywood Farmers Market, and we put a YouTube together and had a very common philosophy of unprocessed whole foods from natural, you know, sources. And that's missing in America. We have a highly processed, rapid food, fake fats, fake sugar, fake everything, you know, and it's literally sold to us through the media and the processors that sell us this concept of whatever it is that they want us to buy. And that's, in doing that, we've processed out the good nutrition of our diets. And we need to get back to the whole unprocessed food nutrition that our great-grandfathers had and mothers had, and get back to some good organic, biodiverse, enzyme-rich, mineral-rich, good fats food. Well, in America, we have consumers that are completely disremoved from their farmers and disconnected from their farmers. And when that happens, you've got the farmers selling to intermediary people, the processing industry, which takes all the nutrition out and all the profit out of the product, and leaves the consumer with a cheap, incomplete, partial food. And sometimes all kinds of additives that you don't want to put in your body, you can't pronounce on the ingredient list. And so the whole renaissance of raw milk is literally a reconnection of farmers to consumers without anybody in the middle. And there's a whole lot of great things that happen when you do that. The consumers are fully nourished. They get a whole, complete food. The farmers are held responsible. They're paid well. And you have a dialogue, and the farmers actually do outreach, and the consumers visit the farm, and all kinds of wonderful things start to happen. The consumers ask different questions of farmers and beg them to do things differently and better. The farmers have to respond and do those things. So there's all these great repair things that happen, and you can't bring this in from China. This is the local food. And it's very Jeffersonian. It rebuilds America from the ground up. It does two great things that we're fighting right now to do. Builds jobs and health. So you not only get nutrition through in the health paradigm, but you also get jobs because raw milk pays well, and you can't fake raw milk. Raw milk's a real food. You can fake pasteurized milk. You take anything you want and cook it to death, but you can't fake raw milk. Yeah, it's a great thing. The problem is the fact that consumers in their minds and all the advertisements they've seen from the pharmaceutical industry and the medical industry, which is now almost 20% of the GMP. In 1961, it was 6 to 7% of the GMP. So we have a medical industry that preys on illness. The consumers don't connect in their minds or in their hearts or their guts that food has anything to do with health. Because they've been trained that you go to the doctor if you have a health problem. They've got the silver bullet. They can fix you. They can do a lap band. They can give you a shot. Well, I'll tell you what. You've got to do your own immune system push-ups. You've got to do your own running. You've got to do your own consumption of biologically diverse foods. You have to eat your own. You have to go to the farmer's market yourself. You can't get a doctor to do that for you. And that's where personal responsibility really comes into this thing, which is a huge departure from where we've been in the past, where we blame everybody for something else and we don't take any responsibility ourselves. And that's a departure from where we've been. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in America to truly bring us back to some place that makes sense and it's in balance, because we're currently in a really lopsided mess with obesity and diabetes and asthma and just everything falling apart, and not understanding that it's our diet and our lack of personal responsibility and choices. That's what's going on. The advantage taken by pharmaceuticals, the medical industry, has been whole. They have made so much money by having people get sicker. A doctor that goes through medical school and has $500,000 in medical school, he needs a long line of sick people to go to deal with their medical problems, right? Why would he want to say, oh no, shut it off with alternative medicine or shut it off with nutrition? And so when you fix the problem, the organic farmers start making money, and the soils that are treated well, and the animals are treated well, and the consumers are well, you don't have that flourishing illness industry anymore. The biggest lobby we have in the United States is the pharmaceutical and the medical lobbies. You don't have an organic lobby. You got organic grassroots people, you got moms, but you don't have an organic lobby. And laws are passed. The FDA is driven by the pressures on Congress and the laws that are promulgated there. And as a result, that's why we see this as a grassroots movement. We see this as moms that want to feed their kids and see the writing on the wall because they read the internet and they see other people's experiences. And they don't believe the drug ads anymore because they understand that drugs merely turn off the signs and symptoms of the disease, and the underlying process eats you alive. And what nutrition does is it turns off the underlying process and you no longer have the symptoms. So it is a grassroots movement. The processing industry. The processing industry, and the fact that there's not a lot of money to do research, because research grants come from places like Monsanto and the big processing industry. And as a result, if the university doesn't say it, then it must not be so. So this is about moms saying it's so. This is about people experiencing their own science experiment in their own gut, saying, I don't have lactose intolerance with raw milk, and I do with processed milk. And my kids don't get ear infections, and their asthma goes away when I drink raw milk. And it's a personal experience that people have to have. And that really requires that you're conscious, that you're concerned, you're focused, you're awake. And those are things that are not going on right now. There's a lot of people just dumbed down to a point in the American society and the culture where they're just kind of bumping along and assuming everything's going to be okay, when in fact the building blocks of disaster are really brewing. Autism, 1 in 90 kids. Asthma, 25% of the kids in Fresno County have some kind of reactive airway disease and asthma. Diabetes, 1 in 3 children going forward are supposed to have diabetes in this country. This is the first generation where the children will live shorter lives than their parents. So these are not good signs. We are spending $7,500 per person per year on the medical industry, and we are way down in the middle of the pack in terms of longevity in the world. You got Denmark and Sweden and these northern European countries that are spending $3,000 per year and are living 3 to 4 years longer. Something's not right, and it's nutrition. Simple, very easy answer. In the 1820s, 30s, 40s, all through the 1800s, up to about the year 1900, raw milk in downtown brewery dairies, and when I say brewery, a fermentation brewery making rum, we're killing 50% of the people that were drinking the milk that was coming from these downtown brewery dairies. And what was happening was, remember, the West Indies were blockaded by Great Britain and the War of 1812, and we couldn't get our rum anymore from Jamaica. And when that happened, we started making our own rum in these downtown locations. And the breweries created a brewer's distiller's swill mash kind of as a byproduct. And they fed to these cows. The cows are in tight confinement. And let's go back a little bit to 1800s. No flushing toilets, no hot water. People drink milking the cows by hand. Oftentimes the people had tuberculosis. The cows had tuberculosis too. Typhoid fever, brucellosis, filthy conditions. That milk killed 50% of the people that drank it. Now, you go downtown and you go out in the grasslands of Pennsylvania, that milk was going to the Mayo Clinic, was perfectly fine. So that period of time really is a black mark on, quote, raw milk. But that raw milk was never intended for human consumption. I mean, it was, but the idea of the pathology of the milk was just unknown. In 1893, Strauss brought in a pasteurizer, which was really not a pasteurizer, it was called a parboiler at the time, from France, from the Pasteur people who had never pasteurized milk at all. That was used for beer and wine, and applied it to milk. And he was thought to be the greatest philanthropist and baby saver in the world, because literally overnight, instead of 50% of people dying, only 10% died. The other 10% stopped dying when they had clean water. So there was this clean versus dirty two raw milks in America existence that started in the like 1900 or so going forward. And they kind of lived in harmony together. The doctors said, no, 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 don't pasteurize. These kids need raw milk. We just need it done cleanly. And then by about 1945, that kind of fell apart, because in 1945, we thought DDT was good for our skin and smoking was good for our lungs. And doctors were saying, oh, smoke is great for asthma. We had no clue about nutrition in 1945. We didn't have any money either. We just finished World War II. We were bankrupt as a country. And we didn't want to worry about quality and testing and ice and all those kinds of things that were required to chill raw milk that was intended for human consumption. Clean raw milk was a hassle. It was hard to do. So fewer and fewer people made it because there was no concern about this whole immune system thing and health. And so the last dairy to produce raw milk that way was Altadena. And then you had the pasteurization industry basically saying, we can make lots of money when you don't have to worry about quality. Just do it dirty and we'll clean it up. Let's not really clean it up. We'll kill it and leave the dirt in there. And that became, today, it's widely acknowledged that pasteurized milk is the highest, most allergenic food in America for kids. It causes lactose intolerance anywhere between 25 and 70% of the population, depending on which subgroup you study. So it's really pasteurization excused filth, but now there's an aftermath of the unraveling of, now we look back on the history and realize, wow, you know, you've got the pieces of fragments of bacteria in this milk. They're all pieces. Your body becomes allergic to that, and it causes all kinds of phlegm production and bronchospasm and all kinds of problems. And now it's the highest, most allergenic food in America, where raw milk is exactly the opposite and stabilizes mast cells and stops the histamine response. So clean and Mother Nature has always been safe, but it's never been commercially exploited or explained because it never made money for a processor. And that's the exact reason why raw milk has got a bad rap. Raw milk has always been wonderfully embraced by the physicians that saw it coming from grass-fed environments and sun-drenched and cleanly. It was the preferred food, but that's not the commercial reality. Farmers markets are not really a commercial operation per se. They're certainly a business of individual farmers getting together and selling to consumers. But in terms of processing, there's not a lot going on there. There's simple cooking, no added ingredients, all organic, subject to all the criticisms and complaints and happiness, and whatever comes from the consumer's mind and heart comes directly across the table to the farmer, and the farmer responds to that. So a lot of integrity there between. I don't see I see Jamie Oliver with the Food Revolution. It's unfortunate a British guy had to come to the United States to kind of kick it up a notch. I want to be the guy here in America that's running, you know, along with Joel Salatin and other leaders that are saying, hey, listen, wait a minute, local, raw, unprocessed, minimally cooked, the right kind of fats, biodiversity. These are critical to our immune systems and sustainability going forward. That is a sustained effort. You see it in Food Inc., the movie Food Inc. You see it in Farmageddon, the new movie coming out. You see all these different movies are really saying, wake up, America. The CAFO systems, the confinement animal feeding operations that have antibiotics and this, that, and the other thing, hormones, are disastrous not only for the wildlife, but the biodiversity and also the human consumption. And it's also bad for the farmers. So there is an evolution it's being somewhat stymied and pushed back by the processing industry, which will certainly lose out unless they modify their practice dramatically to accommodate these new practices. But there is definitely a change in evolution. It's an early change. If you remember back in 1972, Earl Butz, the Undersecretary of Agriculture under Nixon, said, when you hear the word organic, think starvation. That's what he said. 2002, Dr. Dan Glickman signed the organic law into practice. So it took 30 years for that evolution to happen. I see this as maybe a 15-year evolution or 12-year, because the internet rapidly accelerates the educational process. We didn't have that from 72 to 2000. Now we've got that. So I see moms sharing. I see organizations like the Weston A. Price Foundation, the Real Food Symposium, the work done here with the, Alina Luther, what I'm doing, everybody working together. It's just this big, huge organic gorilla in the room. Nobody can deny that, in fact, this food works, and you get healthier kids, and you get healthier bones and teeth and lungs, and it's going to make a difference when people start recognizing and sharing that on the internet. I'm more of a humanitarian than capitalist, but I understand that even the Chinese, and they're communist, and every social country in the world has some means of trade in dollars or some other thing that they exchange back and forth. So that's not going to go away. It's a reasonable way to run a country, to have some means of exchange together. But what I think is most troubling is the fact that we've outsourced to the rest of the world with disregard for our own soils. And I see that as a crisis of human, it's the new civil rights movement in health that's been ignored. When the FDA comes out with these declarative statements, they're actually submitted in court, that says, you have no right to choose foods for your family to eat. Wait a minute. I thought that was foundational. We were assuming that in our Constitution. Well, certain leadership organizations, not leadership, but administrative organizations in our country do not actually believe that to be true, and submitted those kinds of things in court. That actually causes us to have more of a Martin Luther King effect here, in terms of people saying, well, I have a dream. And that dream is we're all going to be healthy here. We're not going to get perpetually worse, and we're not going to have autism in every child, and we're not going to get sicker and sicker. We're not going to be pawns of some corporate industry that doesn't have a moral center. We're going to be based on farmers that have integrity, and soils that are healthy, and animals that are treated well, and sunlight and solar-driven things. And that's the future I see that's really, really powerful. But whenever you take money from one processing industry and you say you're going to take that away there and you're going to give it to a farmer through dollar voting, the consumer's saying, nope, that's it. I'm not going to be on that train anymore. I'm going to get on this train because I don't like where I'm going over here with Food Inc. I'm going to go over here with my organic local farmer. You cause a real ruckus, because that processor's going to lose money, and they've got clout, and they've got connections. They've got congressmen that like them because of the way that they get elected. So it's about dollar voting. And the farmers have become kind of this, segregated to the back 40, and just not really engaged in the political factor, and they aren't going to make a difference, and they're just kind of beaten down in the lowest form of life, right? Well, that's going to change, because if you've got consumers dollar voting, you will no longer have the irrelevance of the farmer. That farmer will actually come center stage, and if the consumers are buying directly from a farmer, that farmer will become an educator. I'm an educator. That's what I do constantly, is educate. I don't sell raw milk, I teach raw milk. And by doing that, you get a respected allegiance of people that it's about hugs, man. It's about honest, sincere communication. I get criticism, I get compliments, I get money, I get all kinds of stuff that regular farmers don't get. And what better way to build America than to have consumers and farmers directly connecting to each other, where you have the real, clear communication and nobody disrupting the process. It's a very high quality of way of life. As a conventional farmer, you don't get any money. You don't get any hugs or kisses from consumers. You don't get feedback. You don't even know if you're planting, the crop you're planting is going to actually make any money. It's just a guess, because you weren't told by an end consumer that that's what they wanted. Well, I get hugs, I get criticism, I get compliments, I get relevance, I get direct feedback from consumers that say, I want pastured eggs. Could you please produce it for me? And you got 50 people saying the same thing. I know there's a market there, so I know what they want, and I produce it, and then what do you know? It sells. That kind of thing's missing in the conventional farming. So this is a departure from the regular food chain. It's a creation of a local food chain that's very, very sustainable and extremely rewarding. Very, very rewarding. I actually see the movement continuing to grow. I see some real birthing pains. I see industry actually recognizing the movement and actually probably augmenting some of their production practices to try to mimic the movement, because obviously they're going to lose money and they need to augment. So I see kind of this swinging back of the pendulum coming, where you got more and more of the local food thing happening, and then more of the corporate stuff becoming less food inkish and swinging back towards the center, because they realize what they've done is way out of whack. So I see some kind of a moderation in the middle in 15, 20 years where there's an awareness, but yet there's not enough local food producers to actually supply everybody. So you have the commercial industry swinging back to something that's a little more normal. There will always be a distinction between directly knowing a farmer and a commercial interest representing a farmer. And I think that people will have a residual effect from this movement where they say, I want to know my farmer. The USDA says, get to know your farmer, get to know your food. Every family needs a farmer. I mean, that's a big thing. Michelle helped Obama got to get that going on. And although I wish Michelle had more clout, because I think her ideas are right on, industry just beats her up. And it's sad, because I think what they're doing with organic gardening, getting kids in the dirt, and connection to local foods is powerful and wonderful. It just doesn't have a strong enough voice. It's about the food pyramid. The food pyramid is a fight over who's going to have the right to sell the most food at whatever, who's going to get promoted the most. And that food pyramid has less and less to do with nutrition and more and more to do with political pull in terms of some industry that wants to get themselves put at the top of the food or the bottom of the food pyramid. And so I see it as quite sad. The scientists, because they take so much money from industry, their science is even twisted and can't really be trusted. So you really have to look outside of that, I think, and get your real science. You look at the work of West End Price is a great example, where you got this guy who had absolutely no economic interest in selling anything, went around and studied people around the world that had never eaten modern processed foods and had vibrant lives. And you study what they ate, and they didn't all drink raw milk, but they all ate what was in raw milk. They had good fats, good bacteria, they had good enzymes, minerals, and they had other whole foods together. And that's what, whether it was from fish or whatever, that they had great multi-generation kind of propagation where they were strong and fertile and didn't have broken bones and lived to be 100 years old. Not all of them did, but many of them did. There's stories about that all over the world for these different cultures that is well defined in science, but it's ignored because it doesn't sell money. It doesn't sell drugs. It doesn't sell commercial food. So I think we got an educational challenge is what we've got. I was at a presentation yesterday where it was First Five, which is funded by the Tobacco Institute, okay? And I was very blessed to be able to talk about raw milk with First Five money that's actually got a group of people together. But it's a disaster who was actually at that presentation. The people were literally ADHD, obese, diabetic, not conscious, numbed down, dumbed down, did not connect anything to do with nutrition and their health and their asthma, which was asthma presentation. And so it was very hard to communicate with the people that are not conscious. So where the real problems are is going to be the hardest to change. I think when we've done our polls and our studies on who drinks raw milk or who eats these whole foods, it's a fairly highly educated person who actually has some money and is very conscious. And that does not proliferate down very well into the people that actually need it most. So we got a problem. We got a big challenge. You have to have examples. You have to have websites. You've got to get into the WIC program. And I was invited to go talk to the WIC program, which is exciting because we take EBT at the dairy. So there's a way to get into it philosophically and change what's driving them, because they know that the processed milk industry gives them cheap milk, but that triggers asthma. It causes the breakdown of the mast cells and histamines, and the kids and the doctor's saying, don't drink milk, don't drink milk. They don't describe pasteurized milk or raw milk, because in their minds, the raw milk doesn't even exist in the world. They're just saying, don't drink milk, when in fact you could drink raw milk and actually make your asthma much, much better quickly, when pasteurized milk triggers asthma. So the WIC program, it knows this. And hopefully the political process won't be so tough that I can't break through a little bit and educate them using great science. I mean, really, here it is, guys. You don't want the truth? You want to talk about politics. This is about the truth. You want to fix your problems? Look at the truth. That's a big thing, to actually talk about the truth versus money that drives politics. It's a big deal. 50,000 people a week drink raw milk in California, and 400 stores carry it. And it's really exciting to see the stories come back from people. And I always ask people, how'd you find out about raw milk? And the stories are unbelievable. I drank raw milk as a kid when I was in Russia, or I have a problem and the doctors couldn't fix it, or they were fixing it with some kind of a drug and it didn't work and it gave me side effects. So I Googled some more and I found you guys. And they just want to, it's this discovery process. And I am so blessed to be in the middle of that now, not as a paramedic, but a former paramedic, where I was constantly responding to 911 calls. And believe me, almost every call I went on, and you go into the house and there's a diabetic or there's a seizure patient or there's somebody having a problem, shortness of breath, heart attack, whatever it was, there's always a pile of FDA-approved drugs right next to them. And nowhere in the house was there any good food. And now I'm able to put food back in the house, and the drugs used on occasion or as needed, and that should be part of the program, not the whole program. The whole program, literally 95% should be nutrition and exercise. And the drugs, yeah, they're important, but they're a small part of the overall picture of health. And I'm very blessed to be a part of the whole renaissance of bringing back clean raw milk that's got high standards and people rejoicing in whole foods.